When we build a React application, we are building primarily a single page application. And when we began talking about React, we went through the fact that inside of our React app, we have a single HTML page. And knowing that HTML pages are the primary document that gets loaded into a browser, that helps us understand that when we say a single page application, we are talking about a single HTML document that gets loaded and loads into the browser all of the resources and assets it needs in order to create that JavaScript application that runs dynamically inside of our browser. Well, being that we only have a single HTML page, what's happening inside of our application right now is everything sits at localhost/3000 or localhost:3000, and no matter what we do, it's at that URL, and we could change and do all kinds of things to our application, but we're still just sitting at this single page, which is index.html. Well, most users are used to, when they navigate within an application to different pages, they are used to seeing a route such as this, /todos, or /admin, or /whatever. And it's those routes that people actually bookmark when they use their bookmark tool inside of their browser. And so it's common exercise that when we create a React app, we try to make it act like a multi-page website or web application, despite the fact that it is a single page application or a single HTML page. The way we get around that is by using a cool tool that has been created that is called React Router. And React Router allows us to mimic the browser paths and URLs that users are used to, kind of like this, inside of our single page applications, even though we are not actually changing the HTML page. In other words, not moving from one index.html to todos.html or from index.html to admin.html. Instead, we're simply just swapping out components in the page. And the React Router, what it does is it allows us to have a navigation that switches us between components, but the users still get paths that they're used to inside of their applications that they can bookmark, or that they can, it just makes it feel more like a regular web application. To do that, we're going to go ahead and implement React Router DOM, which is made for the DOM inside of a browser. And we're going to do that by simply doing npm install React Router. We already have an application that we're demoing. It's our to-do app. But we're going to go ahead and add this React Router DOM to our application. So I'm just going to go ahead and execute this command inside of our, let's go ahead and stop our application really quick. And then let's do our npm install. And then if we jump over there, we can see that it is react-router-dom. So react-router-dom-save. And that should add it to our package.json once it's installed. We should see it down here as part of our packages now. React Router DOM, we've added it. Go ahead and close our package.json, come over here to our app. And now what we can do is, with the React Router, we can now begin to create an application that has what look like multiple pages for our user. And for that, what we're going to do is we're going to change the app.js to being more of our, well, it's not our index page. This one right here is more of our to-do page, or our to-dos page. As we were talking about right here, if we're going to get to our to-dos, we want it to be /todos, like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow the pattern we see here in React Router. We're going to have a regular app that is a functional component. Inside of that functional component, we are going to use our router. So let's go ahead and switch our app.js to be a to-dos component that is in charge of our create, our list to-dos, and our display to-dos. So let's do that really quick. I'm going to go ahead and I am going to rename this file. And we're going to call it to-dos. And we're going to see this as an actual page that we're going to be using. And then we need our app.js page so that we can make sure we include it, because it's really the page inside of our index.js. It's the one that actually gets loaded into our index.html and is used as the primary component in our application, or the primary orchestrating component. So we need to add that back. So we've got ourselves our to-dos. I just named it to-dos. Now we're not going to import the app.sass and app.cs. Those belong inside of our app.js. And we're going to go ahead and change this to the new name, which is our to-dos. So let's go ahead and change it to to-dos, to-dos. And then we're going to go ahead and make sure that it gets exported as to-dos. And now our application, let's go ahead and start it back up, npm start. It should blow up. We should get a bunch of errors because we don't have an app.js. We now have a to-dos.js that replaced our app.js. So let's come back here. So we've got a compile failure in our index.js. There's no such thing as an app.js. So really what we're going to do is we are going to replace our app.js with an app.js that looks very familiar to the one in the tutorial for React Router DOM. So let's go ahead and create underneath our source folder. We're going to go ahead and create a new one that is just app.js. This will replace the one we had before. And of course, this styling actually comes in, or should be, a part of the app.js. We're going to copy that back in, and we're going to get rid of that app.js because we don't need it inside of our component. We'll come back to our app.js, and then just like any other functional component, we're going to go ahead and import React as well as the styles that we already had set up. And here's where we're going to import all of the things that we need for React Router DOM. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that and then paste it in. And we're going to see how to use these inside of our application, inside of our app component right here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. I'm going to go ahead and paste it in so that we now have an app that is being exported as part of our app.js. Right, now we're getting errors because we're trying to use a home and about and a user's path. And what's happening right here is the router is expecting these particular components which don't exist right now. So we'll need to add those components. And instead of about, we're going to make this our to-dos component. So let's come back here and let's import our to-dos. So import to-dos from, and we're going to do ./to-dos, and this is going to be, we're going to refer to this as a page component, or component that represents a virtual page that will get loaded in our browser based on these paths that we have. So this is a virtual page component, and that's why I'm leaving it here in the root with our app.js. Or what we could do is inside of our source file, we could add a new folder and call this pages. And then let's go ahead and move our to-do into pages. Move. And now it's inside of our pages. And now inside of our application, our app.js, we're going to go ahead and pull in. We're going to pull in that to-dos page into our application, into our app.js. And now we've got a to-dos component. And so what we're going to do is we're going to change this from about to to-dos. We're going to change this to to-dos. And then down here, the same path to-dos, we're going to put right here. And then instead of an about, we're going to use our to-dos page component that we imported right here. So we'll go ahead and put that in here as the component that we're going to use for our to-dos page. And you can see one of our errors has gone away. Now we still need a users and a home component, page component, to represent those pages. So for our slash, we're going to create a home. So let's just follow the same pattern. And under our pages, let's create a new one. We're going to call it home.js. And inside of home.js, we're just going to create another functional component just like this with a return. So let's go to home. We need to import React. Then we are going to be exporting some JSX as a part of this component. And let's just return a h1, and we are going to say welcome home. Now we have a page component that represents our home. So let's go ahead and import it. So we'll do import home from /pages /home. And now our other error went away. And we're not going to have a user's location. So we'll go ahead and remove that navigation. And then we're going to remove this route for users. Save it. Now everything compiles. And now when we come to our application, let's see, everything compiles. Now we come to our application, and we should see home. So we've got a navigation right here, home and to-dos, and we have our welcome home. Now the home, of course, is handling the / path right there, which is the default. Now when we click on to-dos, the cool thing now is that we actually have a path inside of our browser that is /to-dos. Now this can be bookmarked. Before, when we were in the root of our application, we really don't have anything to bookmark. Now we have our bookmark right here for to-dos. You can see all of our to-dos are here, and we can still add new to-dos. If we refresh, that to-do should still be in there. Everything's working. But now we have navigation. We can go home, we can go to to-dos, we could add an admin section, we can do whatever we want. And now it is very similar to a website that everybody's used to. But instead of loading multiple HTML pages, instead we are swapping out components inside of our page. So let's run back to our code and let's make sure we understand this. With the React DOM router, we pull in a browser router, which is a router. We pull in a switch, a route, and a link. These are all components that live inside of this React Router DOM library. And with these components, we can begin to simulate a multi-page website inside of a single page web application made in React. And here we're using a router, and we're going to return, as part of our actual component in the body, we're returning a router. So the router actually wraps around our entire JSX that comes out for our application. And this router is actually responsible, because it's wrapped around this JSX, for switching between components and updating the URL that the browser sees. And it's also responsible for responding to changes in the URL. You can see it's not just changes over here when we're clicking inside of our navigation, but it also watches the URL for any changes in the URL path. So if I do to-dos, it's automatically going to change it to our to-dos. So the router is responsible for that. It's responsible for watching the navigation and responsible for watching the browser's URL and making sure that these stay in sync to simulate a multi-page application. Then we have our navigation right here, which is the nav. We're just using regular HTML nav. and we are placing links in there. Now these links are component links, so they are React component links, and they are considered child components of the router. Now they actually report back to the router when they get clicked on, and it tells the router what path it should be moving the browser's URL to, and then it takes care of modifying that, as well as telling the router which one was clicked on. Therefore, it tells the switch component to switch out which component is being rendered in the browser or in the body of our app component. So simply by responding to these links, notifying the router will notify the switch that it should hide or show a particular component based on the path that has been selected inside of the browser URL or based on clicking on these links. This is how, within a single page application, we can make our application feel like it has multiple pages. It also allows us to break up the functionality in our application into more specific domains, and then within those domains we can then implement specific functionality. In this case, we have React components that we are treating as pages in our application, and they are being hidden or shown based on the URL path. And then inside of these components, which we saw here with the to-dos page, we can then import other components from our components folder, and we can use those components inside of our page component. Now keep in mind, I'm only calling them page components in order to help you best understand that these are really just top-level parent components that wrap the functionality or the other components that implement the associated functionality. So when we go to to-dos, we do expect to see a list of to-dos. And we do expect the ability to create to-dos. And if we went further in this application, the ability to edit and delete to-dos as they are completed. With that, I hope you understand React Router DOM. Make sure you go read the documentation so you fully understand it. Implement a little test application yourself and really get used to doing this. This is a great router for making your single page application look like a multi-page application.